Ah, the saga of GB News, or GBBs, as very often we like to call it around here, continues to rumble on. Now, I always said that this is going to be a project which ultimately would continue for some time and potentially not even allowed to fail. Partly because this is being funded by a lot, and I mean a lot, of right-wing hedge funds. They put a lot of money into this. I think it's rumored, uh, or at least the starting price, at least for GB News, is was meant to be about 18 million. That's how much GB News was meant to be worth when it initially launched. However, it has now fallen to 32 million, which is a significant drop in value of that company. Now, bear in mind, that is still a lot of money, still flowing around in that company. And if it wanted to, even though it knew it was sort of making a loss, it could quite happily cut a lot of its costs, maybe cut a lot of its staff, and still continue on trundling along quite nicely if it was prepared to be, well, the second fiddle in this case. Because at the moment, just last year, Talk TV launched. And this is the direct rival. This was very much headed up by Piers Morgan, of all people. And of course, is the main vehicle headed by Rupert Murdoch himself, which is kind of funny because GB News has the moniker of being the British version of Fox News. You know, the other thing in America that Rupert Murdoch owns. So it's kind of funny that happens to have caught that moniker when Rupert Murdoch sort of has nothing to do with GB News in the first place. But it has a lot of problems, and we'll be going into some of those financial problems at just in a moment. But before we go getting into some of those problems, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a motivation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, as always, please do remember to hit the like, share, and subscribe button, and ring the bell as well so you get notifications about the channel. And of course, the Pony Club is down below as well. The one-off donation link where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, etc., etc. I think I've told about this already, but anyway, let's crack on, shall we? Because oh my, oh my, GB News. So the first thing that they decided to do was they gave, of all people, Nigel Farage his own nightly news segment. Now, this is nothing new, actually, for Farage. In fact, he left. Well, actually, he didn't leave LBC, but after his departure from LBC, he very, very quickly went over to GB News. Not too long after, of course, Andrew Neil, one of the original frontmen from the BBC, meant to be founding this. But of course, if you remember at the time, he left under a very, very dark cloud, saying how unprofessional it all was, what was going on behind the scenes. He very, very clearly was not happy at the direction of GB News. And it gets even worse for them because they recently suffered a very hefty fine, although I don't believe we've heard at least what the figure Ofcom has yet charged GB News yet, when they, well, spread misinformation about COVID boosters. What a surprise there. But that will be a very big loss for them. Like I say, it will probably run into at least a couple of million off you. That is for guaranteed. And of course, you've also had Discovery UK. They sold off their stake in the company. They had a 25% stake and they sold it off for £8 million. But what was initially funny was they paid originally for this stake 20 million. Just think about this. This is how much this business has actually devalued, as we said. Originally GB News was valued at about 80 million. Now it has fallen to 32 million. That is a business that is in a lot of trouble. But as we always said, it will be a business that will continue for a while because it's just had a whole new pump in of, well, right wing cash into the region of about, I think, about 60 million. Yes, it had a funding injection of 60 million pounds. So, as we said at the beginning, this is something that will not be allowed to fail, but it will chug on for quite some time. Maybe eventually it will cease to be on TV, but continue in its online segments. We know from the financial information that obviously they have to release as part of Company's House. We know they have made a lot of money just on its streams alone and what it gets from things like its YouTube revenue. So we know it has made a fair chunk of change from that, but not enough to offset some of its losses that it has made. In fact, GB News's first year in its operating, it made an operational loss of over 30 million in its first year. That much we know. So what those losses will amount to after that, we don't know. But bear in mind, you've got currently obviously Nigel Farage being billed as the big frontman. After all, he's hosting sort of the big nightly news segment. We've now got Nadine Dorris, who's taking up the Friday night slot. Again, we must cover some of Nadine Dorris's slots because they are so cringy. It's unbelievable. It's so cringy. And then, of course, coming soon is the Jacob Rees-Mogg show. Here's the thing. I do not know how long that will last because I will tell you now, Jacob Rees-Mogg is not charismatic enough to be able to hold a show by himself. He cannot do what Nigel Farage does. And trust me, I know this full well. I've listened to the Mogcast a couple of times from Conservative Home. Trust me, this man does not have a personality. He does not have anything to show to the camera or to express himself with. This show will die, I think, very quickly. It will not last long. I think they will either give Mogg a co-host to try and bring up the energy, or at least the conversation, or at least guide the conversation, and like Jacob Rees-Mogg will be the anchor in a way, while his co-host will have to provide the energy, and they're gonna have to provide a lot of energy, that's for sure. But yeah, GB News will, I think, trundle on for some time. We are not going to see the end of GB News yet, but these losses that they are having are incredibly deep. The fact that your company has been massively devalued, the fact that you have a rival, Talk TV, which is, from all accounts, not only making more money, doing better numbers, and as we always said when GB News first launched, in the UK, like, the right-wing media is already heavily saturated. So it would have huge problems trying to make its voice heard, trying to sort of make an impact. And what has happened? Well, it's done exactly that. It's failed to make an impact. Talk TV is having a far better time of it because it is heavily linked, of course, to Rupert Murdoch. And of course, it comes off the back of Talk Radio. Its sort of radio version that was, again, launched as a sort of competitor to LBC to try and get into that talk radio market that it was very much sort of capitalizing on. So, how long GB News can last? Well, it can certainly, if it's had that 60 million pound investment spree. Well, it can certainly last, to be honest, a pretty long time based on that amount of money. Especially if it decides to start, cutting costs or even running on a shoestring budget. Or maybe even losing some of these high profile wins, like, Jacob Rees-Mogg or even Nadine Dorris. And to be honest, at the moment, we don't know exactly what they are being paid, because remember, at the moment, Mogg and Doris are MPs, so they will have to declare those earnings sooner or later. But at the moment, I don't think they've declared them, or they might have done, but I haven't managed to look into it before I did this video. I'm sure someone will tell me down below if they've declared them or not, or what exactly they're earning. But I can guarantee you, Mogg ain't cheap. I can guarantee you that. Mogg is not going to be cheap. But yeah, so the continuing saga of GB News will continue. And it will continue for some time, because it is not going to be allowed to fail. Like I say, when you have these right-wing backers that can just pump in, oh, here's 60 million quid. Doesn't matter that you're making a loss. Just have more money. Keep on pumping out our propaganda. So, yeah, that's GB News. Still going to be going on for some time, very much unfortunately. And of course, I predict eventually, when GB News fails, I wouldn't be surprised if Talk TV maybe swoops in and maybe picks up, Nigel Farage, or maybe one of the other couple of presenters that are on GB News at the moment. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, we'll see you all next time.